Welcome to Snow Talk, where the Snow and Ice Management Association brings you trends, stories, news, and personalities that are shaping the professional snow and ice management industry. This season of Snow Talk is sponsored by Western Snowplows and Fisher Engineering. So settle in and let's talk snow.
When plowing is your profession, it's up to you to keep the world moving through winter's worst. Less time worrying about your equipment is more time for clearing lots. So we'll cut to the chase. Only Western builds efficiency into every feature of our plows and spreaders. With 65 years of experience behind us, we know what it takes to save time and stay profitable. So we make one promise: more jobs done faster.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Snow Talk powered by SIMA. Thanks to our sponsors over at Western for making another season of Snow Talk possible. I'm your host, Evan Newman, and today we're diving into one of the most critical challenges and biggest opportunities within our industry. That is aligning sales and operations to create scalable, efficient systems and operational efficiency. So we're excited about this. We're joined today by leaders from EMI, a Dublin-based company, Dublin, Ohio, that is. Based company known for strong coordination between their sales, account management, and field operations teams. Together, we'll explore how EMI creates a seamless handoff from proposal to production, how they manage expectations with property management, and how they keep internal communications tight when the snow starts falling. For listeners who may not know about EMI, can one of you give us a quick overview of the company? So today we're joined by Scott Shelton, EMI Business Development, and Operations Manager Zach Kolasa. So we're excited to have you. And if one of you want to jump in and give us a little more info on EMI, then we'll jump into the conversation.
EMI, so we serve the greater Columbus area only in one market, focus on a little bit of everything: the healthcare, industrial, retail, multifamily, mixed use. We run a diverse fleet of equipment so we can make sure we're servicing everything properly. We try to stay proactive and focused throughout the season and make sure we're documenting everything.
Yeah. We are 600 employees strong, privately owned, family owned and operated. And then in addition to obviously all of our snow services that we'll be talking about today, that's one core component of a range of overall landscape maintenance that we offer to our clients. So in addition to snow, we do traditional grounds maintenance. We have in-house irrigation, an in-house flowers team, on-site landscape architectures, and we do probably a 50-50 balance of landscape maintenance and commercial installation.
That's awesome. That's awesome. This is going to be a good conversation. You guys are a diverse company, but really have dialed in on snow in a market that's seen some ups and downs over the last few years with snow. But just recently, I've been hit by some good storms, so getting put back to the test. Yeah,
that's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me. I want to start at the very beginning of the customer life cycle, that being the sales process. At EMI, what does the sales process look like from first point of contact to proposal? I know, Scott, you're kind of leading the efforts in today's conversation. As far as sales go, you guys have a pretty robust team, but still, I'll turn things over to you to inform me a little more about what this looks like for you.
Yeah, sure. So leads come in all shapes and forms and fashion, but we handle strictly commercial work, obviously. So the first part is, does the type of work fit what we do? And then it's really about collecting who, what, when, where, why of an opportunity of a prospective client. So my job is to just kind of vet this potential client, talk to them, get to understand where they are, what type of service that they need, what type of tenants, and all that leads to what type of service would make the most sense really for them. And then it's about education, right? Especially for folks that, to your point earlier, right? Like Columbus had a few years there where we didn't have a ton of snow. It was probably like a 3-year run there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so folks are kind of remembering what it's like to have to kind of manage these types of events, right? And so, what are their options from like their service triggers? What does that mean? What are their options for things like pre-treatment? And then what does it mean to really kind of sign on the dotted line, like for our service?
It's awesome. I think that client education has continued to be a theme in conversations that we've had, not only within peer groups, but interest groups and with members. Is how do we start educating the client, especially with that turnover in who the clientele is. And by that, I mean, you've got a certain generation of people that are leaving the industry, and now there's a younger generation kind of filling in as property managers and facility managers. Do you see that as a hurdle? And what's that kind of been like for you guys as you start to educate this new generation of clientele?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a hurdle. I think it can be a challenge, right? I think that what we've got is
a learning curve.
Yeah, like a learning curve, right?
Mm-hmm,
and so it's like Zach and I spent back in October of this year, we went and visited a large firm that had a huge portfolio of all these sites across Ohio. And we just did like a simple lunch and learn where we talked about from really start to end, what are they signing up for? What are all of like the different variables that they have to be really just like really thinking about in terms of who are their tenants? What are all the pieces of these contracts, and almost just like a glossary of terms. Like what, like when you have to explain to someone that like you may need an ATV with a brush because you have old bricks on the ground, they're not thinking about these types of small details.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And shameless plug here, if anyone's looking for a glossary of terms, Simon has one of those. If you're not an organization to EMI scale, maybe you're looking for a plug and play opportunity here.
And we actually use those, Evan. We actually take those forms. We print them off. We have 20 copies. We hand them out because then it seems less like a sales opportunity and like a true educational opportunity.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Good to know. Good to know. So getting into the meat and potatoes a bit more here, how do you balance speed with thorough site assessment? So are your account managers and operations teams a part of these site assessments with the sales team? Are you walking hand in hand in some of those efforts to ensure that you're executing to the standard of the company?
Yeah, to everything above. Scott, do you want to like start it off with like you get a lead and then?
Yeah, I think Zach says something that it's about being thorough and not taking any shortcuts. We try to preach to our existing clients whether they have to make a final choice. We say, listen, by this date, we have to have you in our book of business, or there's a chance that we're not going to actually be able to service your site, right? For like a number of factors. And I try to tell them this is not a sales tactic. And then after the first season, then they kind of realize, oh, really, man, I wish I had signed this sooner because we have to do maps. We have to do measurements. We have to do site visits. They oftentimes a property manager, they're not the one who's actually signing this. They have to translate what this agreement is to an owner or to any number of like higher ups, right? And so we preach like you've got to get in early. Like we have internal deadlines just for poor Zach's sanity here, right? But also for them to make sure that like you're going to get serviced because as we saw, right after Thanksgiving this year, we had like 6 inches and it was right coming out of a holiday weekend. And so we were scrambling to get people that we knew we wanted to be serviced or that needed service. On that Wednesday, they're out of office. And then boom, Sunday night, here comes a storm and there were some late scrambles. And so we have to be thorough for operations, for the client and for the clients, all of their stakeholders, right? Because they have tenants, they have owners. So it's all about getting them to understand you can't just rush through this stuff, right? And you try to preach like you're going to have a snow emergency, but a part of that should not be the fact that you don't have a contractor in place to actually help you.
Yeah. And on the op side, Evan, on the op side, our planning for equipment wise starts in July through August. So we're trying to lock that stuff in place by then. So really the late November signers we're trying to fit them into our schedule. So it's always bad to turn away some sales, but as a company standpoint, sometimes it's the best choice unless you could truly fit them in.
I know after that internal deadline, like if I get something that could be a good opportunity or may not, how do you vet that? Because saying yes to one person, they may have 10 other sites we would love to have maybe next year, right? It's like saying yes to something. You might be saying no to something else, but if you say no to something, you may also be saying no to a wealth of other opportunities. So Zach knows that when I'm hovering outside of his office door with some maps, I'm like, what's your thoughts on this? So I will add a level of almost like exclusivity on like the front end. I'll tell folks right away, if they come in late, I don't know if we can service you. I'm going to have to check, right? And that's useful for like a number of reasons. One, if I say no, then I've sort of already let them know that's a possibility. But it creates urgency on their end to like make a decision. But then also it allows me time to go really check to make sure I'm not signing up a client that's not a good fit for my ops team.
Right. And I'm sure you all are looking and maybe leaving a little bit of capacity, for lack of a better term, to say, hey, we can add those last minute clients. But to that end, we have to think about route density. We have to think about service territory. And if we have maybe the most important thing, the labor to manage that site, what the contract terms even look like, I'm sure all come into play there.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So we talked a little bit about tools, jokingly, in terms of the tools that we use being maybe a glossary of terms that Simon provides or production procurement tool. But obviously there's other tools that you all have invested in from a tech perspective, as well as to just make your team ready. So maybe it's not a tech tool, but maybe it's a true piece of equipment. You mentioned piece of sidewalk equipment to ensure that properties are best taken care of in a territory. So what tools have helped you all to ensure estimates and just ensure operations are accurate and repeatable for that matter?
Yeah, so we have an estimating system in place for us to kind of make sure we're getting our estimated amounts per site, how many hours that the job's going to take, all in place. So we invested in that. I use that to build all of our routes, and that obviously spits out our dollar amount for the client. And then we can even give them a budgeted number as well to kind of help them out and say, all right, this is your expected amount that you can possibly spend this year. Obviously, there's room that it could go up or down depending on the season, but at least they can have a budgeted number. I feel like that goes a long way. Just same with the education piece with that. The equipment side, we invest in a lot of equipment, sidewalk equipment, just to make our laborers, the hand shoveler guys and girls' lives way easier. We've all been out there shoveling snow, and we know it's a very difficult job. And if we can make their life easier, we're definitely investing in that, whether it's the SSVs, the Ventracs, the ATVs. We run an array of equipment for that very purpose to service every single different site possible.
Yeah.
Also, we make sure we do site assessments preseason and postseason. And this year we've been doing them during events as well. So we could document the pre and post event. And I feel like that goes a long way as well. Obviously, not only protects us on damage side or liability side, but just to show the client the site has been serviced to the expectations and standards that were put in place through the contract.
That's great. That's great. Glad to hear that there's some things in place. Imagine nothing less, but I'm sure that those are pieces that have made everything a lot easier for the customer and offers a level of transparency for the customer, but a level of protection, I would think, for you all as a company. So final question in this part of our agenda together today, and then we'll jump into the handoff. And this is a good segue here, but how do you communicate realistic service levels to those property managers and facility managers during the sales phase whenever perhaps an operations person isn't on site, Scott? So from a sales perspective, how are you communicating some of that service level operational work?
One of the most important pieces of the puzzle is what's their service trigger, right? So when do you get in queue? Hospitals, assisted living, some high-end retail, they just want to see pavement, right? I mean, that's a 0-inch tolerance. But then between a 1 and a 2, I mean, that's a huge difference. And so what's worked for me is to explain it, especially to a property manager that does not have a lot of seasons under their belt, right? Is to think of it like, when do you board a plane, right? When do you get in line? So if you are, I guess, like the old Southwest way of boarding, right? If you were group B or group C, that's the same as you are a 1-inch or a 2-inch, right? We always say once the snow hits exactly 2 inches, there are not people standing there waiting to start plowing, right? That's when you get in line, right? And so that analogy has like really shed some additional light on, like, you don't know how long it's going to take for a group to actually board. But as soon as they are, then you can start moving. And so that's kind of helped. I think helping them to understand the opportunities that they have during, like, pre-storm and during a storm, to opt in or select to have something pre-treated, right? Also based on their hours of operation, or maybe this building's actually closed because of whatever. Getting them to understand that their service level is still has a little bit of control, and they have to stay in good communication with us too.
I think with that too, I might be jumping ahead, Evan, so I apologize, but from the operations standpoint, I send out an email pre, during, and post, basically whenever I get a weather update saying, this is the operations plan of action to the sales team, and then the sales team sends that out to their clients. And I think that goes a long way. Say, all right, I'm suggesting you guys pre-treat this event, or we are expecting this past one, we are expecting a drastic drop in temperature after the snow falls. So expect a hard refreeze on your site. We will be there, but just to be aware, be extra cautious when you're traveling. So operationally, we're sending that to the sales team to then be proactive to the client. And then with that said, we do offer in all of our contracts a dispatch emails, kind of like a 24/7 customer service. And we've been utilizing that a ton this season. It's occupied by a person throughout the event that can then dispatch that email to the correct branch location to make sure that that request is being serviced. If we missed a sidewalk, if they want to be added to that pre-treat list, anything in all of the above, because we do know a lot of storms happen in the middle of the night. We don't expect the sales team to be out in the middle of the night because their busy time is during the day. So that dispatch email then attaches the sales team so they're aware of what the client is asking, and then can make sure to follow up that that service has been completed. So I think that is a huge differentiating, if that's the right word.
I think you got it. The differentiator. Yeah.
Yeah. Between us and a lot of companies, it does make a big difference.
And then on the sales side, I can send examples of this to a potential client and say, this is the type of communication you will get ahead of a storm. And so for those clients that are really concerned about how do I budget for this, right? Especially like the smaller sites that are really on a tight budget, you say, you're going to have an opportunity up to 72 hours ahead of this storm to kind of make a choice. Do I want to pay to have this lot treated? Do I want to have someone out? And that makes a huge difference on our side of the table too.
Right. First off, great analogy, Scott, around the boarding and pre-boarding and all those different services. And Zach, excellent examples too of how you all are utilizing email and triggers, emails to inform folks around triggers, I should say. And that builds trust, and that builds trust through transparency. You're communicating that in a timely fashion to ensure that there's a certain level of engagement with the client, and you're not just showing up and saying, okay, I'm ready to plow, or hey, I'm pre-treating without your permission. So there's a certain level of engagement that's obviously helping you to build trust. And I would imagine probably building a certain retention with your current customer base. So that's awesome. So outside of the obvious, moving into kind of this handoff, talked a little bit about it throughout this conversation, but the obvious undercutting and pricing, one of the biggest pains, obviously, in our industry is overselling and promising things operationally that are difficult or impossible to deliver on. It sounds like you all have a method to combat that chaos, if you will. We obviously want to go out and sell. We obviously want to be a leader in the space. We want our trucks and our piece of equipment, our brand, to be seen doing the best work at the end of the day. So how do your sales and operations teams stay aligned to avoid that difficulty is my question. What's that kind of look like for you? So diving a little deeper into the conversation we were having a bit earlier, where that handoff's kind of happening and where our teams are kind of coming together to ensure.
Yeah, I think that our company is really focused on setting a clear expectations from operations to sales. Like, who can we sell to? Who can we sign as a client? After that internal deadline, you've got to have some sort of like a pre-approval. So internally, there's clear expectations of, are we at capacity? And there's always smaller caveats like, oh, we already have like a footprint of work in this area. So this one, we could actually bring them on. That goes back to what I was saying about like exclusivity on the front end to a potential client. Say, I don't know if I can take you on at this point, especially if they're after that like initial like October window, pretty much everything's set. So I think it's different to sell this type of service than it is a lot of everything else that we do, because we're selling like emergency,
like an insurance policy,
like an insurance policy. They don't really know how much it's going to snow versus like, I know how much mulch is going to go down. Right. I have no idea how much salt or how much brine is going to go down. And so you get folks that come to the table late and they really want you to oversell. They're like, please help. And it's such a different spot to like kind of be in, where like we'll have folks that have come to the table after this latest storm after Thanksgiving. They're like, can you please take me on? And then you've got to have these caveats like, I don't know. I have to do some homework. And meanwhile, they're not being serviced. And so it is a tough spot, and you want to be there for the client, but you have to be kind of you have to be realistic with them, and you have to make sure that you're not causing a bad, challenging like relationship between sales and ops. Cause I sell it. He's got to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So what information, Zach, is critical for your team to receive early, whether that's a late in the season sale, or even you mentioned making sure you have equipment lined up in August or September for June or July, August or September at the very latest for these jobs. So what information do you expect, or do you have built into your processes with Scott to ensure that streamlined operations?
We kind of built like a checklist. The biggest is hours of operation, their service level. Are they closed on certain holidays or days of the week? Any random notes? Is there a gate code I need? Is there client has a certain sidewalk and doorway open for the weekends, but not during the week randomly? But any of those nuances are very important. And we try to cover that with all of our team members, and the sales team tries to document all that information for us. Can be hectic at the very beginning just to kind of get all this information from the client, which is way better than trying to do it in the middle of the storm. So it's all important information that during the event, we don't have to try and figure out. So it goes a long way.
Yeah. Just like accurate maps, right? Where can we actually push the snow? Having the clients, like sign off on these maps. There might be, a bunch of sidewalks that we care for on like the landscaping side of things, but that oftentimes cannot be the same map during like the winter because they don't want to pay to have all those sidewalk service. Maybe it might be like a quarter of those sidewalks, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't have the same map. And so we just work all of that client data. There's an opportunity to make notes on every aspect of it: drive lanes, sidewalks, entryways, and that's standardized. And God bless them, they are strict about it. Like if you don't have that in place, we are not going out. And so it's really on the sales. I mean, they do hold us accountable and to say, this has to be in, right? And so, but that's just how it has to be.
Right. Good examples. Thank you. And then what does this, we touched on it a bit earlier. It sounds like in you all's world that these two roles are kind of, that there's a clear delineation, and sales continues to communicate with the customer through some engagement of the operations team. But what does the customer experience look like in that transition? Is operations forward facing within your team, or is sales continuously kind of handling that communication and engagement with the client to keep operations really focused on the task at hand?
I would say 98% of the time, sales are the true form of communication. If it's client that they want our involvement or need our involvement in, more than welcome to attend meetings. I try to stay behind the scenes as much as possible just to kind of make sure they're aware, like, we do want the line between sales and ops, and this is your main point of contact. Not to say that there are times, whether it's in the middle of the night and the client's reaching out, or during the season and more information is needed about a certain area on a site or explanation of why the contract's built the way it is, more than willing to add in there and attend meetings. We do try to draw a line. Any preseason meetings, I will attend the handoffs with those, just so they see, like, all right, we do have a snow only manager, operations manager, and this is his only job. And he tries to make sure there's everything and everyone aligned to service your property to the fullest. And like Scott said earlier, like, we do try to do all these lunch and learns and bring people to our office to show them the equipment and what equipment, and our brine maker, we take very much pride in that. This is the equipment. This is what we're doing to be at the top of our game and service your sites.
That handoff just a lot easier. So at EMI, we have a sales team, and then that first handoff goes to an account manager. And these like account managers either have all of the sites of a specific portfolio under like a larger property manager, or they're in a certain part of town, et cetera, et cetera. But the initial handoff is, and I make this clear with them, is like, I'm here to vet you as a potential client. Are you a right fit? Site, type of service, proximity to other work that we have. And then once we get you signed up, you're going to meet your account manager. And this account manager is going to be the sole point of contact. And for like your brand new clients, there's a face-to-face meeting, right? I'm going to be on site with a property manager or an owner or a client with that account manager. And then so you have two members of our team, final review of the map, walk the site. You have a second voice in the room that's really like re-emphasizing everything that you've already told them, but it's good to hear from like that second voice. In our world, a client's going to have one account manager. So the handoff is important, but it's the opportunity to say, especially for a lot of our clients that are snow and landscape, to say, regardless of what you need moving forward, this is John. John is your guy. Okay. You can copy me on stuff in the future. And for any reason, John's sick or whatever, I'm here to help. But just having like multiple voices on site just to reiterate processes, procedures, site details. I mean, that's all very important.
I appreciate that insight, and I appreciate the illustration too. I think that having a team and having that engagement with the customer is important to ensuring long-term sustainability and success for the organization and for your clients, frankly, and ensuring safety is top priority because someone's taking ownership and there's an accountability arm within that. So that's important. So obviously, continuous improvement's a big part of what this industry is all about, especially with the number of different challenges that we face around insurance and legal liabilities. Can you give listeners and those in the snow audience who are listening today an example of a time where some of these checklists and processes that you've put into place prevented a major accident or prevented a major hurdle or customer complaint even, or an example that maybe taught your team to take a step back and say, hey, let's improve this process for the next time around on how we manage this handoff, how we manage the client, and how we manage the property?
Any medical facility, they're all a little different, but they all have the same expectation in place. And that's where the documentation comes forth that some of these sites have more aggressive expectations than the normal zero tolerance site. So just having the preseason meetings, getting all that understanding, I think is very important. It goes in play with some of our larger construction sites as well. We're not only working for them, but then they're working for the owners. So it kind of trickles down from there. So just making sure we're following all the processes and procedures through them. And that's where the documentation comes in place as well. And if there needs to be changes after an event or during the event, all that gets documented. So we can make sure we're trying to do the best for the client moving forward, more than willing to make adjustments on the fly. It's just important that it does get documented so we can make those changes permanently and moving forward. Obviously, some of them still continue to change, whether it's square footages, especially on the construction sites. But I'd say documenting as much as possible.
Documentation means repeatability, right? So that's good. So jumping into what happens after the handoff, you're in the middle of the season. The season is underway, and maybe there's some snow starting to fall, or even given that the Dublin and Columbus area maybe hasn't got that much snow. Maybe it's some simple de-icing events. How are your sales and ops teams staying aligned from storm to storm to support each other through the winter months?
I would say even going right before the season starts, right in the probably beginning of November timeframe, we kind of sit down as an operations team and a sales team together and say, we're going to decide to cut off all sales that we think are going to come in internally, obviously, and just say, and I give them a breakdown of where we stand on our capacity side, how many sites we have of each level. We kind of lay out on the sales side who's covering which areas, if in case there is a large event and we don't want people on the road more than we have to be seeing sites. So we kind of talk on both teams to hash all of this out. And then going into the season, the sales team has weekly meetings, and then I attend some of those as well. just to kind of get an operational point of view to them. And we talk from there, whether it's some misses we're having on certain maps to kind of revisit.
Maybe there's one more piece about how we stay in communication with our clients, again, via email. Again, goes back to kind of like the documentation piece, but also wraps in pre and post, right? This is what we saw. This is how we responded. And a lot of that communication is reviewed and shared internally before it goes out so that everyone knows what's being communicated, like with the client, both pre and post every winter storm. So
I would say the post communication is just as important as the pre communication, because kind of gives the client a wrap up of what the event did. Then they have something documented to compare their bill to, because we all know once an event ends, we forget it and move on to the next event, and the clients do the same. So just more information, the better.
yeah, it does help on the accounts receivable side of things. I have this crazy high bill or this high invoice, and then we can back it up with you had a crazy high snowfall, right? And here's third party weather data that kind of shows that. Here's everything that was in the media. Here's everything that was on like all of our radars. And it really helps them, especially when a property manager has to pay a bill, for example, and then someone above them questions why. They don't have to explain it. They can just simply forward. It's almost like a newsletter, right? Mm-hmm. Where we send out, this is the actual date of the storm. This is what happened. You might have seen this. We had like some record snowfall already. Mm-hmm. And so being able to show them that, not from our mouths, but from like a third party, that helps on essentially like the collection side.
And that's huge. Obviously, everyone wants to get paid. They want to make sure their teams get paid and make sure that the organization continues to run quickly and efficiently. So utilizing some of those tech and tools to ensure that that happens is going to be key, but also communicating it. And Zach, I think you say it well, that postseason communication or post-event rather communication is just as important as the pre-event communication that sometimes we take a lot of pride in, but we forget about the follow-up, right? Yeah. So that's awesome. That's awesome. So one more question in this vein. I should have maybe asked it a few moments ago, but Zach, you mentioned earlier, okay, we've got a construction client, a healthcare client, what have you. Maybe they have a certain level of service that they're expecting, or maybe they've made a change and say, hey, I need this mid-season, or this is a emergency request, a one-off. How do you all handle some of that communication internally? Does the account manager take some of that on? Does that go back to the sales manager? How do you streamline that, I guess?
The sales manager will bring that question or information to the operations side and just flat out ask, hey, is this something we can handle? Is this does it need to be happening right now? Do we have to handle, or can we wait till the event ends and take care of this request? And I think that's where the open communication comes in play, just being upfront of the request, the expectations, timeliness that the request needs to occur is all important, but being upfront with the client saying, all right, let me take this information back to our ops team to see what we can plan out and how to fulfill your request if we're able to.
Awesome. Good stuff. As we move through today's podcast, just want to take one moment to thank our sponsors once again, Western, Fisher, SnowX, the Douglas Dynamics brand, for their sponsorship today. So moving on to tech and accountability, how's tech kind of helped you all to build some internal systems and tools that have made a difference in helping your teams communicate and build an accountability culture within the organization?
The tech side's huge. Obviously, everyone wants to be faster on the billing side, and using that information through the technology, through the billing portals, the CRM systems that are out there now is more than helpful. Whether it's also, with that being said, I'd say the weather monitoring systems that we have in place throughout the city, our third-party weather applications that tell us what weather's coming in, give us our certified snow totals that are in place, and we attach all that information to the billing as well, just so the client has it. Trying to be upfront with them, like we said, the entire time, as much as possible. We try to run as much technology as possible, obviously in a technology-driven world. But yeah, we use GPS, we use everything, and all of it's to kind of help our backup of why the service needed to happen.
there's a lot of sites like in our portfolio that we've had for years and years and years, but still going back to like the technology to get accurate site maps, right? And that helps our ops teams, that helps our clients to really know what are we servicing? What do they want to have done? And it just keeps everybody on the same page. So for me, having, solid site maps that come with solid measurements out of some of these higher end systems helps everyone at the table.
And I think for us is a little different too, because we're family operated and owned. And some of these clients have been with us for the entire 30 years. Yeah. So they're seeing the changes happen too. And we hear it from our owners, like when we were in a truck or writing stuff down on napkins.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's hearing that and seeing that and hearing it from the clients. It's like times are changing, and I'm glad the company is too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, sometimes some of these clients have not seen a really nice detailed map that has every single aspect of the property really color coded based on what type of service is there.
Good examples there of how the industry's evolved and how that's led to a greater level of accountability and how that's ensured a better level of service for clients. I mean, at the end of the day, that's not to discount someone maybe who is just starting out and doesn't have the infrastructure to invest in something like that. But I think that it's an important note that when you make that investment, it pays dividends, right? Because you're able to bill more efficiently and become more profitable in that way. So customer experience, property management experience. Our listeners are obsessed with customer service and ensuring customer experience and the integrity around that, often because this leads to greater retention, greater reputation to secure new leads. And as in you guys' case, it's allowed your family-owned business to grow and further engage and put down a footprint in the Columbus, Ohio market. So recognizing all that property facility managers are juggling, they need a partner. How does EMI ensure a smooth, consistent experience for clients, sales and operationally?
Yeah, I think it starts with what we've been talking about a little earlier in communication, but I think that you've got to structure it in a way that we're trying to equip these property managers with the language and the specific information around these storms that they're able to understand. And then because they really have to kind of like relay this stuff to all of their stakeholders. So whether that's an angry tenant, whether that's they may have contractors on site that are maybe working on a property. They have owners, they have bosses, getting them to understand what's the language, right? What's happened. And when something does go wrong, how can they, frankly, what language do they need to buy themselves a little time and then in turn help us to have some time to kind of get the service done? I think it's about education, whether it's in the sales process, some of these lunch and learns, or all these emails. That trio there really helps to ensure that the property manager knows what to expect and they're able to relay those expectations.
That's great. That's great. And what do customers and what do property managers tell you we value most throughout this process and throughout this relationship? Or what's one big piece of feedback that you all get in that regard?
Just the responsiveness. They want, especially many of them that have been in this field for a while, they know that not everything always goes as planned. But if you're able to be reached, because the worst thing is that I've had people jump to our service because they couldn't get a hold of whoever their previous contractor was. Are you going to pick up your phone? Are you going to answer your texts? And that's really basic. I mean, you could say that. I mean, this could be a podcast about literally any industry, right?
Yeah.
But it still holds true. I mean, they value that the most, staying in the loop, having a good understanding of maybe they're like a 2-inch trigger, right? Them having a good understanding of when will they actually see our trucks on site is really everything to them.
Yeah, clear expectation.
Yeah, clear expectations.
Clear expectations and following up with them is what it sounds like. That's awesome. So I have to put this plug in here for you all. And I get this question a lot from folks is how do I show off my facility or how do I show my customers a little bit about what we do? Scott, I think you mentioned it earlier in conversation. A lot of folks don't even know what the snow industry is capable of. And especially in markets where the snowfall has been up and down and there's been a changing of the guard. You all put on one heck of a customer appreciation event. I've never had the chance to get out to it because my schedules never align. But Zach's always kind enough to invite me because I'm just up the road in Northeast Ohio. So what does this look like for your team? And are there educational components that should be considered? And would you suggest doing something like this for other companies who are looking to really educate customers and clients and team members that they work with?
Obviously, every October, we put on a huge event for our team, and we invite a lot of our key partners and vendors and clients to kind of join in. It's kind of like the more the merrier, and they get more of like a stitched into what our partnership is, right? They see how hard our folks work, why we are actually able to like keep these employees as long as we do. So I think that helps. I think the educational piece of it is, yeah, we're happy to show you like around the yard, kind of like a walk and talk. On the formal educational side of things, we host events here. We will go there. We're always updating our PowerPoints, and we will bring out assorted different types of salt and calcium chloride and in little bags. And we'll bring some brine out. People love salt water, right?
Yeah.
But, I think those tie into everything we have been saying, but these can be a little more fun, which I think often gets overlooked.
That's awesome. So this has been a really meaningful podcast, and I think that a lot of folks will take a lot from it. It sounds to me, and this is something that, I've known Zach for almost 3 years now. He's always, I wouldn't say preaching, that's not his style, but he's always reinsuring alignment creates better systems. But it's not just a system, it's a culture. That's always something that he shared is valuable to him and valuable to his experience with customers. I'm sure it is for you too, Scott. So what do you all do internally to reinforce this collaboration between sales and account managers and field ops? Or is it something that's just a part of the culture? You mentioned being a family-owned company that everyone is just kind of expected to know, hey, this is what you're signing up for and a part of. And how does that then improve relationships and sales and future growth?
I think having the same steps in place, the documentation, continuing to do that every time, and then just trying to improve ourselves. We know we can do better. Do we make mistakes? Yes. But trying to be upfront with that and owning those mistakes are huge. And we have a pre-storm meeting internally with mostly operations. We do invite some of the sales leaders there as well, just so that they can add in and we could get their buy-in. And then we do a post-storm meeting also for the same purpose. Like, where did we fall down? What good happened? Because we do try to take some of those key takeaways and the good comments in the storm, because in the storm, we forget everything, and trying to get some of that documentation down so we could share with the teams, but just trying to have an alignment and doing the same thing every single time just to build habit and continue to improve.
Yeah, I think you have to have a lot of patience, right? I think patience is key because like a lot of our crews are working round the clock. I mean, literally Zach's putting in 60 plus hours during some of these major events, and you've got a lot of things going on. Again, this season has been really tough. We've had 2 like 6-inch like storms. So you've got equipment stuff. You've got struggles with things like labor. You've got the first real test of how was our documentation on the front end? Did it actually live up during a really bad storm and not just like a dusting? And so I think having patience from our team towards ops, understanding that we're oftentimes the face of having to have patience with our clients, and then passing on that patience to our clients to say, hey, we're going to show you like what it's like to talk to someone about this, because you're going to have to go do the exact same thing to all of your stakeholders.
Important reminders, and I appreciate that. And I think that repetition is key. But as the old adage goes, practice makes perfect, but then it's perfect practice makes permanent. It was something that a coach told me at one point or a time. So a perfect practice makes permanent. So it's a permanence that radiates from you all. So any final words as we come to a close today? I really appreciate both of you, but any final insights, maybe one thing that a company could start doing to align here, one thing maybe they should stop doing that you hear from folks in the field came to mind, or an important reminder that you've even learned from a peer that you implemented internally?
Yeah, I think one shameless plug would be for CIMA. CIMA's website has a ton of third-party valuable information, handouts, PDFs, glossary of terms. Share this with your clients, and especially become a member, right? And then say, hey, to show that you are a true professional in this field, and you get access to all of this great information that helps to educate these clients. So I would just say stay engaged with everything that CIMA has to offer and really leverage all of these fantastic resources that are online. And it's been so helpful to walk into like a lunch and learn and say, you don't have to take my word for it. I mean, so.
Yeah, I would say with that, just use those documents to help standardize our own, and then having the honest conversations. As much as we want to take on as much work as possible, every job is a great fit, but just having the conversation of this might not be the best fit for us. We're looking to build a partnership and being honest with those people.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. And I didn't pay Scott at all for that plug, so I appreciate that. And
Evan, there's still time.
Yeah. Yeah, the NIL collective. I'll start putting it together. So this has been incredibly insightful. I appreciate you both. EMI is clearly proving that when sales and account managers and operations work together as one team, the quality of service improves, customers feel more confident, and the company becomes dramatically more efficient. I just appreciate both of you for jumping online with me today, sharing some of those strategies with me. To our listeners, thank you for listening today. My name's Evan Newman, and I appreciate both of you, and I hope everyone has a safe winter and enjoyable rest of the year. Thanks, guys.
Having us, Ben.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Snow Talk, sponsored by Western Snowplows and Fisher Engineering. Check out all of our episodes at cima.org/podcast.
This podcast was edited by Resonate Recordings.